All right, welcome everybody to Hump Day Hangouts. This is the 29th of December, 2021. This is the final Hump Day Hangouts of 2021 before we ring in the new year. Happy to have you here. We got a bunch of great questions on the page today. So we're going to get into those. If you haven't asked your question yet, make sure you get it on there. We appreciate you being here in between the kind of the lull period here between Christmas and New Year's and joining us. So before we get into the questions, though, just want to say hi to the guys and let us know you're watching too. If you're here, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you head over to semanticmastery.com/HD questions or /Hump Day so that you can ask us questions. So that's where we monitor them. So Chris, how was Christmas? How you doing today?
Yeah, doing good today. Was quite surprised. It was one of those years where we had actual white Christmas, so doesn't happen that often, but I enjoyed it. Other than that, yeah, I saw the family and stuff, so good times. Ate a bunch of cookies and stuff, and all kinds of big meals. So
Nice.
definitely not at in my best shape right now, but like I'm working on it again.
That's good, man. Well, that's the thing. I love these threads. It's a good reminder. It's like, hey, a few holiday meals, eating some extra cookies isn't going to destroy you, right? It's more important just getting back into your routine after the holidays. Yeah.
Taking a short break and enjoying it, and don't beating myself up about it, and then get back to work.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, Bradley, how about you? How was your Christmas?
It was good. It was fun. It was, just spent it with family. I had my daughter the day after Christmas for a couple of days, and except it was like 70 degrees in Virginia for Christmas, which is so rare. And it was, I mean, it was just crazy. It didn't feel very Christmassy, at least weather-wise, but it was nice, and enjoyed it. And then I was planning on, my daughter, my New Year's Eve is kind of my holiday with my daughter. And so we were planning, my parents just recently bought a lake house out in another part of Virginia, right on waterfront. And we were going to go see it for the first time and spend New Year's Eve with some of my family, my sister with her kids, so Ava's cousins, all this. And then just found out that my sister's husband, so my brother-in-law, just was diagnosed with COVID today. Just probably the Omicron variant, because it's very mild. But that basically like just threw a monkey wrench into our plans for the weekend. So I'm a little disappointed about that, but it was good, and glad to be here and looking forward to next year for sure.
Cool. Well, yeah, I missed out on having a white Christmas. We went to visit friends in Boston. And so thankfully, with all the flight cancellations, I think, it was just nuts, but we ran the gauntlet and we got over there, came back. And then for those of you who don't know, I'm in Seattle, and it's pretty rare to have a white Christmas in Seattle. But right after Christmas, it snowed. We made it back, and like there's ice and snow, and all the streets are white and the yards are white around here. So kind of a weird one to come back to, but pretty nice. I know one of our mastermind members, Walt Nelson, lives east of here. And I'm sure if he's watching Walt, or maybe you can post to the mastermind, share a picture of maybe the golf course or something with the mountains in the background. I'm sure they've got a ton of snow out there. So
very cool.
Nice.
Cool. Let's see. I had a couple things I wanted to talk to everybody about real quick. First of all, thanks for being here today. Thanks for watching, whether you're watching live or not. If you do watch the replays, you can always join us live, at semanticmastery.com/HD questions. You can ask them ahead of time. We just ask to try to keep to one question so we can get through them. We understand if you got a bunch. I just fair warning that if you ask a bunch of questions at once and there's a lot of other questions, we may have to skip them. So we say try to keep it to one. Also, if you join us live, we can get you clarifications. Like if we're not sure about the way you're asking a question or some details, we can ask you, you can answer, we can get back to you. So we love it when you join us live, but we understand that that's not realistic all the time. And also, if you want to really grow in 2022, if you're an agency owner, if you're a consultant, you're a lead gen, maybe you got brick and mortar business, or you got some amalgamation of all of those like we do, then the mastermind might be the place for you. We're not going to say that it is the place for you, but if you're already listening to us, you're watching Hump Day Hangouts, and you're thinking that this is something you want to grow, then the mastermind is definitely the place for you, not only to hang out with us or get answers from Bradley, myself, or Chris, but also from the peer group of other people who are doing the same things. And you can find out more about that at mastermind.semanticmastery.com. It's been really fun, even over the Christmas timeframe, where normally you see this lull in activity. I don't know about you guys. This is very touchy-feely, but I feel like it's been super active in the mastermind for the last 2 weeks.
Oh my God. Yes, it's been awesome. We've had like 6 new people join in the last 2 weeks, I think. And I've had some amazing onboarding calls. Harry Gillum, He's a gentleman that lives in Loudoun County, which is a kind of an adjacent county, very, very close to me in Virginia. I'm very familiar with where he lives, and we had our onboarding call yesterday, and what's supposed to be a 30-minute onboarding call lasted 90 minutes in a blink of an eye. In a blink of an eye, 90 minutes went by. It was just a fabulous call. A guy sharp as a tack. Really glad to have him and everybody. I just had a really good onboarding call with Demetrius today. He's in New York, and that again, 30 minutes, supposed to be a 30-minute call. We easily went 45, 50 minutes. But it's just been really, really cool. The mastermind is just really hopping right now. We got a lot of good things going. Just really excited about what we're going to be doing for next year. So it's good times.
Well, speaking of, I sent you a message, Bradley, in Slack. Speaking of the mastermind, is that something you can talk about, or we got to keep the wraps on it for now?
Oh, no, we can now. Yeah, the Content King's done for you. SEO tuned content is available for beta testers in Mastermind now. It was an alpha for about 5 or 6 weeks, but we just opened it up for beta testers yesterday. We've had nothing but really good responses or feedback from the alpha testers, so we're able to bring it now. Really, why we haven't launched it a little bit sooner, and eventually once we get this issue that I'm about to mention kind of resolved, and then we're going to open it up to a broader audience. That means anybody. You won't have to be a mastermind member, but we're just kind of developing the processes and making sure that we can fulfill in a timely manner. And then we've got to get some project management app implemented, and that's kind of what we're working through right now. And so our goal is by the end of January to have that implemented so that we can open it up to a broader audience. But it is available right now with beta pricing too, which is better pricing than what it'll be available when we go public with it. So now's a really good time if anybody really needs done for you content. It's SEO tuned. What's interesting is the way that we do it is, if somebody comes to us and says, we want 1,000-word article, I say why. Like, where did you come up with that number? And so we don't sell content based on the number of words. You come to us with your keyword and tell us this is what we want to rank for. And then we let the tools that we use, which is a suite of tools now, I think we're approaching 8 tools now. They go, we let the tools tell us what that keyword is going to require to be competitive. And then we draft the content on that. So sometimes it might be 1,200 words. Other times it might be 2,500 words, and that's what it is. And it goes through a whole process of tuning and optimization through, again, multiple tools. And it's all human directed with AI assisted tools. But it comes out to be really, really good. Again, it's the same content that I've been using. Like, I developed this process on my own. It took me several months using various tools. And then once I really found what worked and a good, a combination of all the tools, I trained my blogger, Esther, to do it. And she has taken it over full time. And she does it. That's all she does. 40 hours a week is working these tools and develop content. And now she's training 2 of her kind of subordinates to assist her so that we can take on more work. And so because that's all she does, she's way better at it than even I was. I just kind of developed a framework and then taught her how to do it. And now it's because she's in there day in and day out, 5 days a week. She's gotten really, really good, way better than even I am with the tools. So really excited and proud to bring that to our mastermind members for now, and eventually, like I said, hopefully by the end of January, to a broader audience.
Outstanding. Yeah. And to add on top of that real quick too, we got some case studies coming down the pipeline too that we're looking forward to sharing with people about that. And well, just a lot more. So I'll save that for later. Anything else, guys, you want to touch on before we dive into it? All right, let's do it.
Okay. I've just dropped, I saw a question from Jim Dubs about a video app. I found one that's fabulous. So I just posted a link to that, Jim, in the comments below. And yeah, let's get into it. As a matter of fact, your question's perfect for what we were just talking about. So let me grab the screen. Stand by 1 minute. Okay, you guys are seeing everything, right?
Good to go.
Okay.
Yep.
Jim says, hey, SM team, I was curious as to what AI-powered tools everyone is using for content generation, scheduling, etc. I hear you guys mention them from time to time, but I thought it might be nice to have them all mentioned in one place. I currently have Jarvis, ClosersCopy, Rytr, Surfer, some custom GPT apps in my arsenal. I thought about giving Article Forge another chance, although I wasn't impressed with version 1 or 2. I'm also in the market for a video generation tool. If you have any suggestions, hope you have a safe and happy new year. As always, thanks for your time and providing this weekly hangout. Well, thank you, Jim. I know you've been coming here for years, man. So we certainly appreciate that. So yeah, as I just mentioned with specifically for content, we use a number of tools. Phrase, so phrase.io is great for creating content outlines. It uses a very question and answer based process, which Google loves that kind of content. So we use phrase a lot. We also use outranking.io. That's probably what we use the heaviest now. And again, it's more about developing the outline than actually fleshing out the content. So we use a combination of phrase and outranking to develop the outlines. And we flesh the outlines out a bit with outranking, but then we use a combination of Surfer and Jarvis to kind of really flesh out the content more. So once the outlines, really well-defined outlines have been produced, then we go in and flesh it out a little bit more. Now, one of the nice things about outranking is it uses what they call concepts, which it uses like an AI writing. I don't think it's GPT-3, it might be, but it basically what it does is it will it has an AI writing assistant built into it. It doesn't create as much content output like Jarvis does, but if you guys have been using Jarvis, you know that Jarvis a lot of the times will spit out stuff that is completely irrelevant or has to be fact checked. You know what I mean? And so what's nice about outranking is it's got the ability that when it does the SERP analysis for the keyword that you submit, it all the top 20 results that it's pulled in, it will confine the AI writing assistant into within guardrails that are set up by the content that it's scraped from the top 20 results. In other words, it uses the content that it's pulled in from the top 20 results to really direct the AI writing assistant. So it's much more relevant than just using Jarvis alone, if that makes sense. But the output is a lot less generally. It's going to vary by topic, certainly, but the output on the outranking side with the AI writing assistant is a lot less than Jarvis puts out. So sometimes we need to fluff it up a little bit. So we'll go, use Jarvis for that. And then we do a final couple of tunings, with a couple different services. My team uses Surfer to do kind of the final tuning on the content. When it comes to me, content that comes to me that I personally analyze, I like to use Inlinks for that, inlinks.net. That's not an AI writing assistant at all, but it's a really good tuning tool. We also use some other tools too to help depending on the content, but for like link building content or tier 1 assets and things like that, we also use a number of other tools. Page Rewriter, it's really, really good. Quillbot is a great tool for rephrasing content. So one of the things that you can do to maximize the value that you get out of well-tuned content is using that same content for link building content or for tier 1 entity assets. But you can take money site content, and I recommend you still, treat tier 1 entity content, so this is content published on like your tier 1 assets like Blogger, Tumblr, WordPress. I'm not talking about syndicated posts. I'm talking about separate and unique posts that are published that are well tuned also. And I think those types of pieces of content should be original. But when you get like to tier 2 or for link building content and that kind of stuff, you can take content that you've developed either yourself or you've purchased that's been well tuned, and then run that through something like Quillbot, which Quillbot will rephrase it. It's not a spinner. It rephrases it and keeps the concepts intact and the kind of natural language process intact, if that makes sense. So those are all really, really good tools that we all use, it depending on what kind of content it is and where that content is going to be published. Real quick about Article Forge. Article Forge is fabulous right now. On smaller outputs. So with Article Forge, I think it's version 3 or whatever. I think it's fabulous. It's especially good for Google Business Posts because if you put the output to short, which is around 250 words, that's almost perfect for a Google Business Post. In fact, it's usually a little bit too much. Usually a Google Business Post will take except roughly, it's 1,500 characters, but that's roughly about 225 words. So with Article Forge 3, like we're using it in-house now for Google Business Posts because it's really good for that. Once you start to go with a little bit higher output count, like 500 words or 750 words, I found like it's worthless because the last couple of paragraphs that it spits out are generally junk and they have to be edited out anyways. But something that works really good for, and I just actually tasked my my blogger to do this, but one thing that I like to do that's working really well right now for link building content is to create a roughly 1,500 word article using 6 or 7 250 word outputs with Article Forge, because you can essentially with Article Forge, if you haven't used it yet, version 3, like you put one seed keyword in, but it's not just a keyword. You kind of you write the keyword in natural language format. And then you define with the supporting keywords section underneath, you give it some kind of supporting keywords to clarify the intent of that search query or the query that you put in as the primary. And what's great about that is if you keep it to 250 word output, now you can, again, go develop an outline using phrase, outranking, surfer, whatever tool it is that you want to use to develop an outline. But once you have an outline developed with a clear hierarchy between H2s and H3s, then you can go over to Article Forge 3.0 and you can flesh that out with 250 word outputs. And it's working really, really good because you just take each section header and you add that in as like the primary keyword essentially, and then you add a couple of supporting keywords to define or to clarify the intent, and you set it to 250 word output, and it will spit out 250 words. And then you just do that for each section heading, and mainly the H2 headings, right? The H3, if there were H3s, those are usually going to be the supporting keywords to clarify the intent of the H2 anyway. So that's kind of how we're using it to develop content for link building. So it's much more efficient. It's less expensive to produce, but it's done really, really well. And so if you do that with like 6 H2s or 6 or 7 H2s, you have to obviously edit it slightly. It needs to be some manual editing, some human involvement to kind of connect those 250 word outputs in a logical way. So a little bit of editing, some connector sentences might have to be drafted to connect those, headings and those 250 word outputs. But 6 or 7 of those will create and end up creating like a 1,500 word article that is very well optimized. And then if you really want to, depending on where you're going to publish it, like I said, we're using this mainly for link building content right now, but you can go publish or go tune that with like Surfer SEO. I usually mention that because that's probably the most common, SEO tuning tool available or app that most people use is Surfer. But you can take that content and run it through Content Planner or Content Editor, excuse me, and tune it. The output content from Article Forge, and it just works really, really well. And I'm telling you what, guys, like I've been doing a lot. I mean, I'm fascinated, obsessed with link building right now. Like I love it. I love digging into backlinks and analyzing backlinks and all that. And I've been doing a lot of link building stuff lately, even for some of our mastermind members. And it's crazy. But if you have really well-tuned content as your link source, like in other words, if you're placing a link back to whatever asset it is you're trying to promote within really well-tuned content, it has a significant difference, right? You can get, and what I've been finding is much better results with relevance than metrics. Like in other words, a lot of people, people look at metrics and say, well, I want to link from a really high authority place that has high trust flow and everything else. And what I'm finding is I can move the needle better with a link on a lower valued property, but really relevant content than getting a link from a higher valued property, but less relevant content, which makes it really good for us because now, if you don't have to always try to get a link on a really high authority place, it makes it a little bit easier, more accessible to average people to be able to still get, really good links. So, all those tools combined, we're using every one of them, and they all have their own place or combinations of those tools to produce content depending on where it's going to be used. But I don't know how we did SEO without all this shit before. I look back even just 2 years ago and I'm like, man, how did we do this stuff without these kind of tools? Because they're just phenomenal. And, it's just been a lot of fun playing with them. So as far as you asked about scheduling and things like that. I mean, for me, I do everything in high level as far as, prospecting. And that's kind of like my main CRM that I use for everything, even for, some of our businesses that we're launching under Semantic Mastery. So like Content Kings, for example, all that stuff is, I use high level for all that. Although I spent a week trying to find a project management app, and I thought I had decided on one last week and decided I didn't like it after I spent about 6 hours trying to set it up and just realized it was just overcomplicated. So I think we finally made a decision to go with ClickUp today. Which is funny because that was like suggested when I first started the whole journey of trying to find a project management app. And I was like, no, I don't like it, because I got into ClickUp when it was still like on a lifetime deal or something. Like, I got it real cheap, and I didn't like it back then, but I just got back into it today a little bit. And I was like, man, yeah, it's come leaps and bounds from what I remember. So I think we're going to stick with ClickUp, but I don't know if that answered all your questions, Jim, but it was funny. There was a post in Michael Bowe's, one of Michael Bowe's groups in Facebook, where they were talking about Jarvis, and I was talking about how valuable that's been for my business. And somebody asked about specifically Keith Baxter asked specifically, like, hey man, it would be great to see a tutorial on how you're using it. And I was like, man, you know how many requests I've had for that? I think a training program on, the various AI tools and how we're using them would absolutely do well. I just don't know if I'm going to have the time to do that. It's not a major priority, but I know that there's a real demand for that, because I've had a lot of people ask about it. So that's on our, my kind of to-do, like, wish list, is to perhaps do some, not like in-depth training, but at least some kind of like, surface level training on how I'm using the various tools that I have. And I think that could be something good that would be valuable, but it's on the to-do wish list, if that makes sense. So maybe in sometime next year, in the first, quarter or two, I can get to something like that. Anyway, great question. Thanks for being here, Jim. Gordon says, hey guys, hope you and your families had a wonderful Christmas. What's up, Gordon? He said, sorry to ask a 3-part question, but it's all related. Number one, if you're building a multi-city local niche lead gen site, it is my understanding that you can't use the same content for each city and just saying this, change the city optimizers. Is that true? Or do you have to use completely different content for each city page, or can you change the content slightly and avoid a Google penalty? Okay, so number one, let me just answer that first. Over all the years, I've always said, don't use the same content. And I've gone out of my way and spent an enormous amount of money and time and effort on generating unique content for all the pages. Mike Martin was the one that actually was like, he was finally the one to convince me that that's not absolutely necessary after all these years. And he made sense. The way that he broke it down, that really was the first time I ever thought about it in another way, right? Was that, Google understands if a plumbing company, for example, has, a couple of main services and they list them on their service page. Doesn't matter how many locations they serve, it's the same services, right? So how many times do you have to say that you do drain cleaning or water heater repair or water heater replacement? Like, how many times do you have, how many different ways can you say that? It's the same damn service. It's just available in different locations. And so that was the first time I'd ever really thought about okay, maybe it's not necessary to do what I've always done, which again, I've gone to great lengths to always use unique and original content. I used to talk about how, for example, I would have, if I was going to go target, say 25 locations, I would get 5 articles written, and I would have each one of those articles rewritten 4 times, because the original article, and now I don't have articles written because my team does it based upon all the stuff that I just talked about. But when I used to buy content, I would have 5 original articles written, and then I would have each one of those articles rewritten 4 times, because it was less expensive to have an article rewritten than to have a new article created. And when I say original article, remember guys, when you're buying content from content farms, none of that shit's original. All they do is go scrape content, and they'll spin it maybe manually. But again, it's content farm content is not original. It never is. So now everything that we do is original. It's AI assisted, human generated content, if that makes sense. But anyways, I used to have, again, in that example, 25, if I needed 25 location pages, I would have 5 original articles written, and in each one of those rewritten 4 times, that would give me 25. And when I would order the rewrites, I would order 4 different rewrites from 4 different authors, or writers, not authors, writers. If that makes sense? Because if you give the same article to one writer to rewrite 4 times, it's going to be it's hard to do. How do I know that? Well, because my blogger, since all I do is tree service stuff, my bloggers told me before, it's exhausting always trying to write about tree service stuff. And I don't blame her. I'm sure it gets very boring to write about the same shit over and over and over again. So anyway, all that said, many projects over the years, I've always used unique content on all the pages. But more recently, I've really come to the realization that that's true. If it's for the same brand, I don't know why you would have to have complete unique content. Here's the thing. You can have the same content with swap out the location modifiers for each one of the location pages. It's the same services, just different locations. And then in the code, right? So in the schemas, this is how you can make the page more unique, right? The structured data for each one of the location pages should be unique to that location. So that makes it more unique, right? It's not, the location modifiers within the visible text on the page, the public side facing side of the page is all going to be swapped out with with whatever location it's being optimized for. But the context of the page can still be the same because it's the same services just being served up to different locations. But then in the background, so in other words, in the schema and at the code level, you have now structured data that's unique to each location as well. And that kinds to add more diversity to the page itself, if that makes sense. So, the short answer is, I don't think it's totally necessary. I haven't done a ton of testing on that though. All of my own experience has always been using unique and original content on every page. But I think what he said was 100% logical. And since he does a lot of mass page stuff and he gets really good results with his own methods, I can't argue with that. You know what I mean? And I think it's very logical what he said. So hopefully that makes sense. This is a great question. Number two, if you're using WordPress for that type of site and you want to add extra geolocation content for each targeted city to boost the location SEO, is it best to add that content as a separate post for each targeted city or as a separate page for each targeted city? Posts and pages don't matter. It doesn't matter how you do it. It just depends on if you're going to stack content within a silo structure, then typically it's going to be posts. It's easier to do that because you can just place the post within the category and then interlinking and everything's easier. You can still do it with pages, but it's usually more traditional to do posts that way. Usually I use pages in WordPress for like landing pages or top of silo. If you're in a simple silo, if you're doing a complex silo where you have top level categories and in subcategories, you'll have a top level page and a sub or a child page. And then you have posts underneath the child pages, right? Which would be placed in subcategories. But that's a complex silo structure. I don't recommend that unless it's needed. The easier you keep the structure of your site, the easier it is to manage and the better you can direct link flow within the site, right? Or in rank, in links, in rank. There's a number of terms for that, but essentially internal page rank or internal link juice, link equity, whatever you want to call it. There's a number of terms that all mean the same damn thing, but it's much easier to direct internal link flow with a shallower site, right? With a site with a simpler, an easier or less complicated architecture than it is with a complex silo. I mean, again, I've always called them complex silos when you have top level categories and subcategories, specifically because they're complicated. They're complicated to build, they're complicated to manage, they're complicated to direct internal link equity. It really is. And I used to almost always build complex silo sites because I thought I was going to be smart, right? And outsmart Google, and found out over the years that really that's unnecessary. And I really try to keep my sites as flat as possible, right? And so wider than deep, if that makes sense. And it's just easier to direct internal link flow that way. And I've just gotten way better results in local marketing by structuring my sites that way. And it's just much easier to manage too. So hopefully that makes sense. We should use reciprocal linking between that content of each related city page or just one way. I tend to try to just use one-way links. There are differing opinions on that. Always just linking in one direction is, Marco actually taught that to me about 2, maybe 3 years ago. And so I've really been following that, which was to just do linking in one direction. So in other words, if you're going to daisy chain posts together, you always link to the previous post, but you don't do bidirectional linking because that's a reciprocal link. And that can kill page rank. Although I've seen it both ways. I've seen where you've got reciprocal linking between posts within a same silo or from the top of silo page down into the supporting post and in the supporting post link back up to the top of silo page. Again, that's a reciprocal link. And I've still seen that rank and rank very, very well. So, but my own personal methodology, I really adopted what Marco had taught me a few years ago, which was to always keep it in a unidirectional link, if that makes sense. And so that's just the way that I've been doing it ever since. But again, I've seen it both ways. I've seen it work both ways. So I really don't, I don't have a specific way to tell you how to do it other than to test with it. Again, like for example, Jeffrey Smith with SEO Bootcamp, and he's a master at on page and building topical relevancy. And he can rank stuff with very little to no backlinks because he can build topical authority in the way that he structures his site builds. And he does reciprocal links. He does the rel equals prev or next. You know what I'm saying? Like those are the code that can be inserted through his plugin automatically within a silo that will link to the previous post in that silo and the next post. So they're always reciprocal links. And he just crushes it. Every topic that or market that he wants to enter, he just crushes because he knows how to build topical authority. So he does internal linking differently than what Marco had taught me, and which is really the way that I adopted it. So I've seen it both ways. So I would just say test it. Honestly, whatever you feel is best, test and then see what kind of results. What's cool about it is if you've got a site that's got two different silos on it, you can test both. Does that make sense? Because in one silo you could do that where you're reciprocal linking within content within that same silo. And then in the other one, you could do it where it's unidirectional and you could test and see what kind of results you get. And if one outperforms the other, then go with that. You know what I mean? So that was another good question. Last part. I believe you may have mentioned that Google can now tell if you have spun content or if you have rephrased existing content for your site. So if you're using any of the content scraper tools for top ranked sites, can you mix and match or rephrase that top ranked content to create your own optimized content that Google will like? Or will Google be able to detect similarities between your content and the content of top sites that penalize you? Again, Google can detect spun content because it tokenizes words that are similar. Like all the synonyms really are kind of condensed down into one word, right? And so Google can take one piece of content that's been spun 50 times and it can detect, that those spun versions of it are basically the same structure of the original. Unless you're using, again, like multi-level, where some of the spinners will do like total paragraph rewriting and all that and change the entire structure and all that kind of stuff. Maybe that's a little bit better, but, rephrasing content is better because it keeps everything natural language, right? So it keeps the words that would go together better than like, spinners just swap out synonyms and such. And so it's easy to have words that aren't fully relevant and all that. All I'm saying is to kind of answer your question, Gordon, when you're taking bits and pieces of other people's content and you're mix and matching, like I like to do, I call them Frankenstein articles, right? And Page Rewriter is fantastic for that. But then you rephrase it, obviously swap out any non-relevant terms with relevant terms. And that means like locations and any brand mentions and stuff like that. You obviously want to swap that out to make it relevant to your project. But I like to Frankenstein articles, paragraph here, a header here, another paragraph from another site here, another paragraph or a heading from another site here, and kind of Frankenstein this article together. Then you swap out those, the non-relevant terms for relevant terms, and then I go run it through a rephraser, right? And that way it's unique. And I've not had any bad experiences doing that yet. Again, I don't typically do that for money site content. We will do that sometimes for tier 1 content, and then for link building content, absolutely. There's no question. That's one of the best ways to do it. Okay. So again, I don't like to use spinners. I still do for like, if I'm doing a lot of, like map embeds or something like that, that in the gig that I'm ordering requires a spun article, then I might take an article and run it through Spin Rewriter still, because those are kind of like Web 2 embeds and it's different. But if I'm going to be building links back to my money site or my Google Business Profile website, which are my two primary money assets, then I'm going to use well-tuned content. I don't like to use anything spun at all. And I like to use really, really well, like I like to treat content that where I'm placing a link that's going to point back to my money site or to my Google Business website. I want that content to be optimized just as good as the content that's on my money site. If that makes sense. Tier 2, absolutely. You can get, in my opinion, you can get away with less, optimized content or less well-produced content, so to speak. But I think it's really, really important. Again, from testing over the last 6 months, I've just been buried in link building, and I'm fascinated with it actually. And I found just really good results. If I can get a link placed, really relevant content, even if it's a lower powered property that I'm getting as the link source, it moves the needle more than getting a high powered link in a non-relevant source. And so for me, I'd rather take the time and spend the money on content than, and time and effort into the content so that I get more effect from the link, right? It's more efficient that way, and it's more cost effective actually. So And the beautiful thing, like I said, especially with tier one tuned content like that, is you can take that piece of content and run it through a rephrase or 2 or 3 times. And now you've got 3 or 4 pieces of content that you can use for tier one link building. Does that make sense? Because again, it's not money site content. So I'm okay with taking that tier one content and putting it through a rephraser once or twice or 3 times. And now I've got multiple pieces of content that I can use. And you might swap the kind of like the structure of the article around too, besides just rephrasing it. Maybe add another paragraph here and there and that kind of stuff. But now you can take that same piece of content and publish it on multiple locations. And now you have a really relevant tier one link back to your money site or your Google business website. If that makes sense. Okay. Another good question. Harry, hey, Harry, I was just talking about you. He says, I'm using domain-based, he's one of our new mastermind members. He said, I'm using domain-based emails to set up my GMBs because my Filipino assistant and I both work on them. We create VPSs in Vultr, so virtual private servers in Vultr, to solve our Philippines versus USA login problems. So we're always going into the GMB through one IP. Each GMB is permanently assigned to its nearest VPS, a max of 5 GMBs per VPS. Now going forward, what do I need to know to set up Google Workspace, or what do I need to know to do to set up Google Workspace accounts? Okay, that's what, that was a question that I posed to you in that thread, Harry, specifically because I've actually run into this just a couple of times in the last 2 years, but where if I set up a Google Workspace account before trying to verify GMB or Google Business Profile, then I get less. I've actually had a couple times where I've been able to verify via email, which was weird. And also I've never had any issues getting the postcard. Now I know there's the whole video verification thing going on right now, which honestly, that's not something I'm even ready to tackle at this moment. And Harry's been on top of that. He's been doing a ton of research. He's been sharing all of his research in the mastermind about how to, what the workaround is for the video verification methods right now. We still haven't come to a conclusion yet, but Harry is hot on its trail, like trying to, figure out solutions for that. And him and I, like I said, had a 90-minute call yesterday, and I've got some ideas too, but I'm just not ready to tackle those just yet. But what I'm saying is that might be something that I would suggest was, instead of just using a domain email, here's the thing. If you can buy that domain through Google Domains, okay, you buy the domain through domains.google, right? Now you've registered the domain with a credit card, through a Google account. Then you can set up Google Workspace through the checkout process. It's just a box you check that will put Google Workspace and install all the, verification records, MX records, SPF, DMARC, DKIM, all of those records get built in direct. If you've ever set up Workspace on your own, that you have to go into the DNS, wherever your DNS is, either at the registrar level or through Cloudflare or whatever. And you have to go add all those MX records, and then to add in the security records, SPF and all those others. You have to do all that. And then you have to verify them in Workspace and all that. If you buy the domain through Google Domains, it's $15, for top level domains, as opposed to $12. And so you spend a couple bucks more, but now you've purchased the domain through Google. It's an instant verification signal, right? Validation signal. Then if you just check a box to install Workspace on that domain, just go with a basic account. That's $6 per user per month. I think they, by default, sets it on standard, which is $12 per user per month. But if you just set it for basic, then it will automatically insert all those records, the DMARC, everything, or all of that stuff will be set up for you. And then now you go try to register a GMB through that. And you've already have multiple verification or validation signals through Google, right? And that's my question is, I don't know, because I have not been testing anything yet with this video verification nonsense that just occurred. But I know that, that may lower that verification threshold a little bit, if that makes sense, because, you've already proven, I don't know. That's just the way, again, I've had it's only happened a couple of times in the last 2 years that I've been doing it that way, but I've actually been able to verify. I'm sure it's not possible now, but I was actually able to verify a few GMBs just through email by doing it that way. And then every other one that I've done the traditional way, which was via postcard, I've never had an issue where the postcard didn't arrive when I did it that way. If I tried to verify it or create a Google business listing without doing it through Workspace, sometimes I'd have to request a postcard 3 or 4 times before it would come. So again, I think that is definitely kind of a validation signal that you just, by purchasing the domain through Google and then setting up Workspace, it's like, okay, there's a real person behind this. It's not 100% spammed listing. Even if my intent is to be 100% spammed listing, I've at least, claimed a domain and purchased Workspace, and I've got credit card on file, so they know there's a real person behind it and everything else. I don't know if that helps or not, but that's something I think would be worth pursuing, is trying that perhaps, and seeing if there's, I don't know what else we can do so far about the video verification stuff. It is what it is. We got to roll with the punches, guys. If we have to evolve and start, doing other methods, then it is what it is. It's just, I think Google, Harry and I were talking about this, they knew that this was going to cause a lot of problems for people. I'm sure they understand. They're, Google's not stupid. So I'm sure they were aware that, there's going to be it's going to have a profound effect on this whole industry. My thoughts are they want to push more people into ads. Like, honestly, I think that's it. If they get rid of a bunch of GMB spammers, then what are lead gen people supposed to do other than work on ads? Like, get better at generating leads through ads. Because organic rankings, at least in the local space, they don't produce the amount of leads that GMBs do. It's just, and at least on all the industries and the home service industries that I've worked in the last, many years, organic rankings just really don't push many leads. About 70% of all leads that I generated came through the Google business assets. And so now it might be that we have to start getting way better at ads. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, but it is on our radar for sure. Nigel, what's up, man? He says, hey, good day, gents. Hope all of you are doing awesome and had an amazing holiday so far. My question today is on Google Knowledge Panel. How can you use mgyb.co and semantic mastery techniques to achieve a Google Knowledge Panel? In other words, what services or steps should be performed or purchased to achieve getting a knowledge panel if possible? Well, a knowledge panel is for a knowledge panel to pop for a brand search, it just means you have to have strengthened the entity enough for Google to recognize it. Does that make sense? So the entity has to become an authority, has to be recognized and become enough of an authority, which generally that's not that hard to do for a brand search. Where it's hard to do is if the brand name is a generic keyword. So for example, I've done some training recently on a location that I set up called Lynchburg Tree Service. Well, that's a generic, that's the brand name of the location, but it's just a generic search term. It's city plus tree service, right? So that's much harder to get a knowledge panel to pop. It's not that it can't be done, but it's a much heavier lift, right? To do that than it is like if you had a unique name. Like if I did Benner's Tree Service, Lynchburg or something, right? That would be a much more unique name that would be much easier to pop a knowledge panel for it, because I could establish an entity of that, for that brand name. And it would vary because there's probably not any others competing for that. Google would recognize it as an entity, and it could, after a certain threshold has been met, a knowledge panel will pop for that. So like I said, it's generally about the more you can strengthen an entity, there's a number of ways to do that. What we teach, which is about going out and getting, expanding your entity footprint. In other words, getting a profile and a presence on as many different assets out on the web as you can, interlinking those assets, which is incredibly important because that creates the associations between those nodes, so to speak, right? And Google creates this knowledge graph for that term or the brand or the entity and all of its nodes connected. So that's another way to do it. That's why syndication networks are still valuable. Even if we're not really syndicating, they're still valuable because, again, it's about the entity footprint. Same thing with, the Google Sites, Drive Stacks, all of those, any Google properties, the Google My Business, the Google Business Profile, all of those things, YouTube, any sort of Google properties that you can add to that, entity footprint is really going to help. Anything high authority period is going to help. All of that. And then it's about, structured data, guys, using schema properly is going to make a huge difference. So, again, popping a knowledge panel for an entity or a brand or a cert, typically, as long as it's not a generic keyword, which is very difficult to be recognized as an entity. It's not that it can't be done, but it's very difficult. So as long as you have a kind of a unique name or, something that's, it doesn't have to be entirely unique, but it has to be, and then you have to build the entity assets and make all those connections and associations, get published in a lot of places, Press releases help with that kind of stuff. Social media accounts help with that kind of stuff. Web 2s, Google properties, citations, if it's local business, citations are a big part of that. Getting submitted to local data aggregators. That's another big thing. Voice search now, right? So Google, Alexa, all those types of voice search engines, which there's a number of them now, having a presence there. Like all of those things are really going to help. YouTube, once again, YouTube. Guys, YouTube's a big thing, right? Just having a YouTube channel and connecting all of your assets in the about page. And then also publishing YouTube videos with NAP and, name, address, and phone number, link back to the site, all that kind of stuff. All those things are going to help. So, creating a knowledge panel is about having an entity established that Google has determined is enough authority that it will create that knowledge panel for you, right? Hopefully that helps. There's a provider on, if you guys have ever tried to create a page on wikidata.org, I've tried a number of times, and every single time my pages have been deleted. They've been moderated out. There's a provider on Legit that does Wikidata pages for $30. And I've just gotten a couple of them. They're not even 2 weeks old yet, but they're still live. Every time I've ever tried to do a wikidata.org page for any one of the GMB locations or brands or clients or anything, within 3 days, they're deleted. They've been flagged for deletion. But I've got, I've got one that I just got back, I don't know, a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now, from a provider on Legit, and it's still live. I just checked it yesterday. So like I mentioned in my review of that service, that if it sticks, which I'm going to give it a couple more weeks, but if it sticks, I'm going to be buying a lot of them from this provider, because that's another great way. Wikidata is a semantic database. So if you can get a company page published on Wikidata that sticks, that's a big one too. That'll help to pop a knowledge panel too. That's one additional component that you can add. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Vance says, afternoon, gents. I have 2 clients that are down over 30% traffic over the last few months. Can I ask what your top 2 or 3 strategies are to dial in on what the issues may be? Thank you in advance. Well, Vance, probably part of it is, it's very likely, at the very end of November through the first week of December, Google did the biggest update to their local local search algorithm in 5 years. And so that's had quite a big shakeup for a lot of locations, a lot of keywords, maps, exposure. It's tightened the proximity limits even more, which, that sucks. But their Google business profiles especially are being shown in a less broad area, in competitive markets, mainly, more so than less competitive markets or industries. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it probably has to do with that. But I mean, it's really hard to dial in or to try to give you any advice on this right now, other than that if you're talking about within the last 30% over the last few months. Yeah, a few months ago, I'm not sure, because there's always algorithm updates, but the biggest local search algorithm update in 5 years occurred about a month ago now. And so that's still, that's caused a lot of problems for people. I've noticed a lot, even in my own lead gen stuff, for a lot of my tree service stuff, my leads have slowed down. Well, it's that time of year too, but more so than I'm used to. And I think a lot of it has to do with the proximity being tighter now. So my maps areas aren't getting as much coverage as they had been before. So they're more locally focused now and based on proximity. And so I think that's had an effect. Also, the layout of the SERP, like the SERPs page, right? The layout has changed a bit, especially like in Firefox. You'll see that it's a significant difference. And ads are so prominent now. They've even pushed the map down further, where I'm seeing as many as, in some cases, I've even seen 5 ads at the top of the page, which is insane. Most of the time now I'm seeing 4 ads at the top of the page before you get to the map pack, with the map now off to the side instead on the top. And now I'm seeing ads in the maps too, right? The maps 3-pack is now as much as 4 or even 5-pack with 1 or 2 ads. So you got to think people are, and the guaranteed service ads, those are also causing a problem. They hadn't been for tree service contractors for a long time. I had a lot of people come and say, hey man, our local service, guaranteed service ads, are they slowing down your lead gen business? And it really hadn't for quite some time. But more recently, I've noticed kind of a dip in the amount of leads generated. And I think that's having an effect too. So, I think part of what Google's doing with the video verifications for Google business profiles is to push more people into ads. And the prominence of ads now and SERPs is, I think more proof of that, right? That's why I said it might be that we have to get better at ads, guys. I mean, it is what it is. I still love SEO. I'm still going to do SEO, but I think, ads might be something worth taking another look at and just getting really good at running ads too, as kind of a way to augment the loss of Google business stuff. So, look, Vance, take a look at your search console, see if you can see any significant dips in traffic there. And if you can, note the dates and then go do some research. Just use Google to search for, updates around that date where you see significant drop in search traffic from Search Console, and see if you can, pinpoint it. It's just going to take some digging and some research. Look at your backlink profile. If you noticed that you had a significant increase in backlinks at a certain date and then, correlates with a drop in traffic, it could be that you had some bad backlinks. It might not be a significant number of backlinks. It could be one really bad backlink, one high powered link that just with over optimized anchor text. So again, there's so many variables. It's really hard to give you any advice here. Although I do have a location-based consultation service right now. It's only available to mastermind members though, but I swear to God, I'm doing one-on-one consultation for mastermind members right now for each one of their locations. It's an additional fee, but I personally analyze your assets, do full backlink analysis. I'll give you on-page recommendations, off-page recommendations, tell you what links need to be built and which anchor text ratios at which time, all that kind of stuff. And again, in Mastermind, I just opened that up. It's in beta testing right now for Mastermind members. I've got 7 locations and I'm enjoying that. It's giving me more access to more data. It's going to make me a better SEO. And our members that are testing that with me right now have been pretty appreciative of it as well. So you might want to check into that too, Vance. Any recommendations on a chat box that will go to a sales rep with a message after submission of something like someone will be in touch within 24 hours? High level, I use Go High Level. It's really high level, but people refer to it as Go High Level because that's their domain. It's really high level. Okay. I use High Level, and High Level has some services that will integrate with their chat widgets that will do like handoffs to real people. Eliza or something like that is one of the add-on services with High Level that will do that. And then there's some third-party providers that will also integrate with High Level. There are probably other chat solutions that do it as well, but I've been fully integrated with High Level now for a year and a half. So I really don't have any other solutions because I haven't tested any others, and I don't plan on it. I'm happy with High Level. So check into that.
Well, there are also a couple other ones like Intercom. Then Intercom.
Intercom?
Yes.
Okay.
Then you can, in absolute simplest way, you can do email that you send to the affected people, or you can also do like a Telegram or WhatsApp message that gets sent like a text message to those people. All those are pretty easy to implement, actually.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so I think there's one more that Adam posted from Facebook, and that's good because we're just about out of time, so good timing. He says, from Facebook group, this might be a little off topic, but what tools would you use to create a membership site? Key features that I need are for business partners to have access to info pulled from mutual clients that will be the members, and for members to have private information specific to them in their portal, as well as general info that I'll update from time to time. That's the same for all members. I hope that makes sense. Thanks in advance. Adam says, for above, I would consider either using a WordPress-based membership site that has levels or permissions, or consider something like a project management software like ClickUp or Monday. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. High Level has a membership kind of side of their app, but I don't think it will do what you just said that you kind of want to do. And in fact, I'm not crazy about the whole membership side of High Level. I use it for prospecting and CRM, and they do have a great funnel builder. I'm using that for front end sales pages and stuff now. I really like that. But as far as the membership stuff, I don't know. And even our own membership sites for Semantic Mastery we're not crazy about them. We've got so much stuff in them now. It's just hard to get away from them. Honestly, I don't really have a good, I'd take Adam's advice. I haven't really looked at it. ClickUp, again, I just started looking into ClickUp today because I wanted to avoid it. And I just signed up today for a trial account and got into the training and started setting up what they call workspaces and in spaces and lists and stuff like that. And I think that it's come leaps and bounds. I think it's going to do everything that we need. And I'm glad that Adam recommended it. And that, I think you might be able to do some stuff in there. Just go take a look. Yeah, I don't have anything else. You, Chris, you got any ideas?
It really depends on like the details. Like it's still pretty surface level. In my opinion, the whole question, because he mentions I need the features that I need are for business partners to have access to info pulled from the mutual clients that will be the members. For members to have private information specific to them, the portal, as well as general info that I will update from time to time. So there's like the thing, like how do you want to display the information, right? How do you want to have charts there? Do you have just text? Do you have videos? Do you have spreadsheets? That's really like the key, how you want to display that information, right? Because you can go from Asana to Airtables to Notion to Member Mouse. Like there are too many options that I can, or things that I could recommend, because I'm missing certain details on there still.
Yeah, it's interesting because ClickUp, like I said, I'm just going through some of the initial onboarding videos today. It actually integrates with like, Drive and everything else to where, and you can set permissions for team members or guests. Guests would be like, members that, I don't know. I think there's permission levels and stuff that you could do there you can even embed files and everything inside of ClickUp and then restrict access to them based upon permission levels and stuff. And like I said, I'm not here to pitch ClickUp because I just got signed up for a trial today, but I think there's a lot of really cool features that might be a solution. So anyways, thanks everybody for being here. Vance, appreciate that. He says, thanks for the advice and wishing you guys great New Year's Eve. Looking forward to spending a lot of time or money with your group in 2022. Well, that's awesome, Vance. We're glad that, we will welcome you. So everybody enjoy your New Year's, be safe. We got a lot coming out next year, and, we hope to help you guys get best results and make a lot of money next year as well. So everybody be safe. We'll see you all next year. Thanks, Chris.